Okay, so now we're in our first session, and we have Tieshun Roquerre. Actually, we just had a great podcast with you on the Global from Asia show that I'm a host, and I'm really excited for your session here. And we're right on time. We're maybe a few minutes behind, but do you have any slides you'd like to share? Of course, also some people, there's some plus, you can hit some plus signs and stuff here also in the bottom for people that want to support.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, I don't have any slides, but
Okay.
I do have some demos that I can show
Perfect.
that I think are
Sure.
a little bit more
Yeah.
effective at
Yeah,
explaining Handshake.
I agree. We're kind of like an unconference here, so no problem. There's a share
Totally.
screen button there on the bottom you should see, and then
Yeah, I see that. I see that. Cool. Okay, so I'll just kind of give a brief overview of what I'm going to cover in this first intro session. Basically, I'm going to explain what Handshake is, why Handshake needs to exist, why now, which is always a very important question for any new technology. Why now when there have been so many attempts in the past? And then I'll also give a quick overview of the current state of Handshake and kind of cover some of the use cases and where the community can go from here. So at a brief high level, Handshake is a decentralized domain name system protocol. And that probably sounds like a lot of jargon, but to kind of put into simple terms, when we're on a website like airmeet.com, you're using the domain name system. Airmeet.com is the domain name. .com is the extension, and it's all controlled by the domain name system, or abbreviated DNS for short. And effectively, the way that it works now is that infrastructure is fairly centralized. Their .com, for example, is a domain extension controlled by VeriSign, which is a for-profit company. I think they're worth like $20 billion or something like that. They make about $1 billion a year just from .com registrations. And then above VeriSign is an organization called ICANN, which governs the all of the domain extensions. So they kind of control who gets .com, who owns .io, .net, etc. And so you can think of the domain name system as a tree that at the top is controlled by ICANN. It's worth tens of billions of dollars, and it's centralized. And what Handshake does is it decentralizes the root zone. It replaces ICANN with the decentralized protocol. And there are a number of benefits that accrue once you do that. There are benefits around true ownership. Now you can actually own your own domain extension, whereas normally that's inaccessible to people. You have benefits around security and censorship resistance. And I know I just kind of shared a lot about what Handshake is, and that can kind of seem foreign. So I'll just quickly show you, how Handshake is used, and that should kind of give you a concrete image of what Handshake is. Let me just share my screen real quick. And I think this should be working. I'm just going to open a new tab. And I'm going to go to a normal website like Namebase.io. This is the company that we've built in order to make Handshake easy to use. It's kind of like an on-ramp for Handshake. And then I'm going to go to another website, welcome.nb. And this is a domain name on the Handshake protocol. So NB is a domain extension that was registered on Handshake. And that's the name that you get to actually own on Handshake. It's a protocol that lets you register these domain extensions. Right, so like .com, .io, .net, these are all different domain extensions. And Handshake lets you register new extensions directly on the blockchain that you get to own. And that also means that you get to control all the subdomains. So in this case, we have welcome.nb. We created that subdomain, and then we put up a site on welcome.nb. The really neat thing about Handshake, though, is that you can not only just use it for normal sites, but you can also use the name itself as a domain name. So in this case, we also put up a website at NB, the domain extension. And this is a website, we call it a D-Link. It's basically like a decentralized link tree. It's using a Web3 protocol called Skycoin, Skynet, for the hosting, and then it's using Handshake for the naming. So it's actually a full decentralized website. And so the really cool thing about Handshake is that you can not only use it for normal websites. So I think welcome.nb, for example, this is a static website hosted on DigitalOcean, which is like a hosting provider. But this website is actually hosted on Web3 protocols using Handshake for the naming and Saya for the storage. And I'm going to stop sharing for just a second, just to kind of go back and explain a little bit more about what this all is. The really cool thing about Handshake is, it gives ownership of naming back to people. And it's really, really important now because of the trends that we're seeing in the internet today, which is that censorship and consolidation are increasingly becoming major problems that we're seeing on the internet. And when you think about the usage of the internet, domain names are basically like the first layer of the internet protocol stack, right? The first thing that you type in when you open up a browser is a domain name. So if you want to have a decentralized internet, you need a decentralized naming system as a gateway to that internet. And that's basically the hole in the role that Handshake fulfills. A question that we often get, though, in terms of why now, because if any of you are familiar with other naming protocols, and also even before blockchain technology existed, there were alternative root zones that were attempted in the past. An alternative root zone is basically what Handshake is, creating a new DNS root that's not the ICANN controlled system. And not only have there been alternative roots before blockchains existed, there's also been Namecoin. After Namecoin, there's also ENS and unstoppable domains. And so a lot of different attempts at, these alternative root zones. And you have to ask yourself, okay, why now and why Handshake? And something to consider for any new technology is what allows it to succeed. And usually there are two main components that are really important for new technology to succeed. You need, one, the technology to just work, right? So for example, if you look at Bitcoin, before Bitcoin, there were numerous attempts at digital currencies, right? There was BitGold and a few other ones decades earlier. But it wasn't until Satoshi Nakamoto basically constructed all the mechanics and used the computer science and cryptography and blockchain technology and put it all together into a single package and aligned all the incentives that we had a cryptocurrency protocol that could actually, succeed and, be a functional technology that couldn't be censored. In addition to that, you also have to look at what allows new technologies to succeed culturally, which is you need a cultural zeitgeist in order for people to actually care about a new technology. So if you look at Bitcoin, for example, Bitcoin launched in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis. And that cultural pull, a lot of people were really upset about the money printing that happened and the bailouts and all the corruption and how broken the system was. And that allowed a lot of interest to kind of gather towards Bitcoin when it launched at that at that time in history. And so the two things that are necessary for Bitcoin to succeed: one is the technology needed to work, and then two, the cultural zeitgeist needs to basically pull people towards towards Bitcoin. That is effectively what we're seeing now for the Web3, which is right now. There is finally a decentralized protocol that does decentralized DNS, and where the challenge is there and why that was, it would be difficult for Namecoin to have succeeded. But effectively, Handshake has the technology working. And then it's only now in 2021 that we're seeing the cultural zeitgeist form towards this decentralization and the decentralized internet. And so those two things paired together are very important. And then you also have to consider the fact that now in 2021, we have all of these Web3 technologies all launching at the same time, right? We have Filecoin, we have IPFS. I think Filecoin was like years in the making, and then now it's finally launched. We have IPFS, Siacoin, Skynet as a functional decentralized storage technology. So we have all these Web3 technology. Is kind of amazing, the timing. They're all becoming functional all at once. And when you think about decentralized naming, you need naming as one layer of the stack, but you also need storage and compute and everything else that you come to associate with rich dynamic applications. Another protocol that recently launched is launching this month is a cache, which is decentralized compute. So now it's like literally just within this, recent like 3-month period, that's becoming possible to build truly decentralized, rich, dynamic applications. And this is something that's like literally only happened in 2021. So that's really the why now answer, which is we have the cultural pull towards decentralization, and then we finally have the technological maturity for the decentralized web to come into fruition. Now, given that overview, I'm also just going to talk a little bit about the state of Handshake today. If you've been in the community for a while, Handshake's only a year old, and already over 700,000 names have been registered, which is really exciting. The market, I'll just show a quick screen share real quick. If you can see right here. Cool. We recently released a stats page, which kind of tracks a bunch of different stats in Handshake, and we're also, working to add more and more stats there so people can track the stats. There's also shakestats.com, which is another good site. But basically, you can see that the marketplace for Handshake names has been growing basically exponentially. So there's more and more interest in Handshake names every month. And then something that's really, really important beyond the speculation is also the usage. Not only has the number of registered names been growing basically at an exponential pace, I think it's around 25%, per month, but also the number of unique Handshake domains in use. So we track this as if a name has been registered on the blockchain, it also has had its DNS settings altered, right? Because if a name doesn't have the DNS settings altered, then it's basically sitting dormant. And so this number has also been growing exponentially. And this is an amazing thing to see because, if you look through the first few months of Handshake's launch, it was fairly quiet, only a few sites on it, and only recently has the traction started to really gain steam. And the way I see it is it seems like the community is finally hitting critical mass. If you think of any sort of network effect community, you always need to reach this point of critical mass where the community just like grows exponentially. The technologies that you can pair with Handshake start to come to fruition. We're seeing adoption from crypto influencers. I'll just show you real quick. This is Nick Carter. He's well known for having, being an outspoken Bitcoin supporter. He's really big in the Bitcoin community, but also he kind of has a D-Web thesis for his fund. He's been getting into Handshake, and you can see he's linked to his D-Link, which I'm showing right here. And this is on hns.to, which is a centralized, normal internet gateway, so that when you're sharing Handshake names, you can still share with people who haven't changed their settings over to Handshake. And then I, of course, have set up Handshake on my computer using hdns.io, which is, I'm actually just announcing this publicly for the first time during the conference. It's a public DNS resolver that you can basically just change a setting in your computer and start resolving Handshake names on, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, any device. We haven't announced this publicly yet, but I'm just kind of giving you a sneak peek if you're listening during the conference. But basically, I've set up my computer to point to Handshake and use the Handshake resolver for resolution, so I can visit Nick Carter's website. And so we're starting to get adoption from well-known crypto enthusiasts who, typically don't look at too many other protocols, but Handshake's really starting to gain traction, and that's really exciting. And another interesting thing is that you can use the Handshake names for more than just normal domain name. You can use them for decentralized login, decentralized social applications. A lot of these new use cases are basically just coming into fruition now and aren't really well known yet. So it's just like a really exciting time to be in the community. I'll show another quick demo, which is pretty neat. Again, this is something that we haven't really announced too publicly, and it's just live today. But we just created this forum, which functions like a normal forum, except the really cool thing is it lets you use your Handshake name for decentralized authentication. So I'll just show how this works real quick here. Basically, you can log in with your Handshake name. And so in this case, I have Tieshun on Handshake, and I'm able to go and use my name to actually log into, it's like basically using Handshake as a primitive to allow you to authenticate. That might sound like a lot of jargon, and that might be really confusing. So if anyone's confused, feel free to talk to me afterwards. And I can kind of explain how that all works. But this is something that we're just releasing today. And we also have a mega thread for HandyCon. So if you actually go there, you can use your Handshake name to authenticate. And then I also have my D-Link on Tieshun as well. This is kind of like a sprawling demo, and it might seem kind of confusing and all over the place. But basically, the key takeaway is, finally in 2021, we not only have the technological maturity, but also the cultural zeitgeist for decentralized DNS to succeed. And for Handshake specifically, the community is hitting critical mass, getting adoption from crypto influencers, developers, domainers, and then also there's a lot of exciting stuff happening in the community. Not just stuff that we're doing at Namebase, but also the entire community is creating really cool stuff. I think someone also just recently created, I'm checking out the showcase, someone just created HNS Search, which is a search engine for Handshake names. So you can use that to actually go and check out a bunch of different sites on Handshake. So there's a lot of cool stuff. Cool. So with that said, I saw there were some raised hand notifications on the sidebar. I'm not too familiar with Ernie. Maybe I can take some questions that people might have.
Yeah, sure.
I think that might be a good use of the remaining time.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's great, Tish. And thanks for sharing. So just some recaps. Definitely check out hdns.io, which is what he mentioned, so that we'll be able to resolve Handshake names without any kind of other settings needed on your laptop or phone, which is amazing. And then news.namebase.io, which is Namer News, which you just basically two big announcements of new products out of Namebase, which is really exciting for everybody here to check out and experience. So I saw a couple questions. If others, there's a pretty active chat here. Again, another benefit of being here live on the AirMeet event. So I'm just reading. I think some people are a little bit confused. They said Namebase is .io. Isn't that centralized or on ICANN? I'm kind of paraphrasing, but it was a longer question. I'm scrolling up. I don't know if you want to answer or explain that.
Yeah, totally. So Namebase, just for context, is separate from Handshake. You can kind of think of Handshake as a protocol, and Namebase is building on top of Handshake, similar to how Bitcoin is a protocol and Coinbase builds on top of Bitcoin. So what Namebase does is we're effectively an on-ramp, and our goal is to make Handshake really easy to use. So for someone who has zero pre-existing knowledge of Handshake, who has zero HNS, if you want to get started getting into Handshake, getting HNS, getting a Handshake name, you need to get HNS, you need to bid on a name on the Handshake blockchain. And Namebase basically makes that easy to use. So that's why we also have a website on a traditional website, namebase.io, because that's going to be the easiest way for people to still access it. And we actually also have Namebase as a TLD on Handshake itself. So you can go to Namebase / in your browser, you can have access the D-Link that we set up there. And we're going to be transitioning Namebase / and make that another gateway to Namebase itself, because something that I didn't talk about too much is you can actually use Handshake as a more secure route for your DNS than certificate authorities. And this is getting fairly technical, but basically one of the main security goals of Handshake is to actually replace certificate authorities, which are a trusted third party that your computer relies on for HTTPS, and replace it with a blockchain, which has a number of really desirable security properties. But basically, this is also something that's an ongoing development in the Handshake community, which is you can currently use Handshake names for HTTPS, but we need some more integrations and more infrastructure work to make it really easy for end users to use. So that is something that we will be doing, is transitioning Namebase right now is a D-Link, is a decentralized web page pointing to our different links online. But we're going to transition it to just be another way that you can access the Namebase.io site. But we'll always just have Namebase.io, just because it's important for newcomers to be able to access the website and have an easy on-ramp for Handshake.
Okay. GYY student says, what about security? It's kind of, I think you even just kind of touched on it a little bit. And I know that's a huge loaded question that might be hard to answer in a couple of minutes, but that's a question.
Yeah, there's a really good, we wrote a blog post. If you go to our blog on Namebase, maybe I can just share, I'm going to share it in the Namer News post and talk about, which talks about basically how Handshake can actually improve the security on the internet. So I just posted it in the HandyCon mega thread. So if you're on Name News, you can just click into that. But basically, the ultimate goal of Handshake is to serve as a more secure root of trust for HTTPS. And that is really the end goal, and that's like kind of like the nirvana of security. So you should probably just go and read through that post. It kind of tries to, I don't know how well of an attempt it is, but it tries to break it down in a way that even if you're not technical, you can understand it. But that is the ultimate end goal of Handshake, and that's something that the entire community is working towards too.
Awesome. Thanks. There's some people just saying bare TLDs don't work for them so well as SLDs. I don't know if you want to explain what a lot of people don't even know what TLDs really are. Everybody just knows a domain is like a domain, but SLD I think is what people would consider a domain name, right?
Yeah.
I think sometimes we go a little bit more advanced, but maybe some people don't know differences SLD, TLD, or bare D.
Totally. So I'll just share my screen, and this can illustrate it pretty easily. So in this case, we have two websites, both using the NB TLD, but in this case, I'm using NB as the domain itself. And in this case, I'm using an SLD, second level domain. So this is the top level domain right here, NB. Welcome is the second level domain. This entire string is a domain name. In this case, this entire string is the domain name. And when someone was saying, oh, the TLD doesn't work in my browser, that's because the browser support, it varies. In some browsers, you just have to put NB/. In other ones, I think you have to put NB // or maybe just NB . And that's just because not all browsers will let you use a TLD as a domain itself. And in those cases, you can also just use a normal SLD, because that's something that all browsers will recognize, of course. The other really neat thing, and I'll just share this because Clay Collins, who's the founder of Nomics, he also owns .c on Handshake. But something that's really cool that you can do with your Handshake name is you can also, not because you own the TLD, you can actually sell the subdomains. You can sell the SLDs to others. So something that Clay Collins did with .c is he's using one of our products, the Namebase registry, which is currently in private beta, but we're launching it publicly later this month. But basically, you can actually go and sell SLDs off of your TLD. And so Clay Collins is using the Namebase registry to sell .c domains. And we've integrated with 101domain.com, which is a traditional domain registrar, and circo.com, which is another domain registrar, and also gateway.io, which is like a domain registrar built specifically for Handshake. But he's selling the .c domains through that. And amazingly, .c is already a top 500 TLD in comparison to ICANN TLD. So currently there are about 1,500 ICANN TLDs. And just based off the number of registrations that .c has, it's already a top 500 TLD. So something that's been really exciting for the community is the Handshake names are effectively NFTs that can have cash flows. And that's something that's just like really underexplored right now. We're hoping to make that a lot easier for anyone to go and use just through the Namebase registry, so people can just go and start selling the SLDs off their TLD with a click of a button. But the really neat thing about that is that now that you can value these NFTs using kind of traditional financial metrics. So for example, I think .c has like a few hundred registrations right now. Let's say like just like 500 as like simple math. 500 registrations, $10 per name, that renews annually. So that's $5,000 per year in cash flow. And then the name itself, .c, was purchased for about $5,000. If you go to the domain on Namebase, you can see the purchase history. So it's already basically made back what it was paid for. And then also, if you think about like the value of the domain, it's not just the annual revenue; it's the annual revenue projected into the future with some sort of discount value. So if you just use like a basic just like 10x multiplier, the value of the .c domain is already like 10x what Clay originally purchased for it, which is really cool. And that's only going to grow because now he's marketing his name and people are buying it. But that's a really exciting development that is still growing.
Okay, great. We have a few more minutes, but we're probably gonna move to the next session in like about less than 5 minutes, so everybody prepare. There's a couple more questions I want to try my best to see if we can get them. Somebody, there's still some, even me, I was a little bit hesitant for a week or two when I first heard about it. Somebody's asking, what if ICANN buys Namebase, and what happens to all the names?
Yeah. If ICANN buys Namebase,
I'm going to read the full question. There's a lot of
Okay.
chat, so something like, what if they? He seems like a maybe potential skeptic, or he's trying to break the model. He's just saying, what happens if somebody buys Namebase, and what would happen to the names? I think I'm trying to scroll up in the questions. If you ask that question, you could clarify. But he's just another maybe hesitant or cautious person trying to understand what if he owns it, or if ICANN or someone bought your company, what would happen to his names, I think is the question.
Got it. Yeah, that's a great question. ICANN's not an organization that would be making that type of acquisition. It's just, it's like a non-profit organization. It's kind of this like huge bureaucratic thing. Like that's not really what they do. So that wouldn't really, that doesn't really make as much sense. But you can think through like, okay, what would happen if an acquiring company, let's say like GoDaddy or Coinbase, went and bought Namebase. So the really neat thing is, one is any acquiring company like that in a world in which that sale happened, they would also still have to follow like the terms of service that Namebase has around the management of the names, because Namebase is like a cloud wallet for Handshake. But ultimately, Handshake persists past Namebase because Handshake is the underlying blockchain. All these names are registered on Handshake. So the really neat thing is you can get your name on Namebase, and then you can just withdraw it to your own self-custodied wallet. In that case, you would need to manage the private keys and then the heartbeat transaction, which is another technical detail. You can manage that yourself. But the really cool thing is you don't need to use Handshake through Namebase. If you want to use the interface that we have in the on-ramp, you're welcome to do that. If you want to go use your own wallet, if you want to use the CLI, you can do all of that yourself, and basically as an end user you have that full choice. And also if you use one or the other, you can always change your mind and switch over whenever you want. So that's the really cool thing about blockchain technologies, is that as a user you're not locked in. You can just go and use a protocol however you'd like.
Okay, so there's quite a few more questions. I feel like we have a whole conference. There's 2 days of content. So I know some people are maybe just hearing about this or still learning.
Yeah, maybe we can just do like a wrap-up question. I can just point people to further resources.
Yeah, I think people still, I mean, even me, like, it's just like, you're like, you mentioned Coinbase. So if people know Coinbase for Bitcoin, your company Namebase is like a Coinbase for Handshake. I mean, if people can understand that relationship, or even like, or domains is a registrar. So I think maybe people are trying to understand that. So if your company was to be bought or merged, the clients own the names that they have on your platform. I think there's still some people that are just maybe new or cautious, or just trying to break them, trying to just break the model, I think. But yeah, so I'm just reading some more questions. Custody of, yeah, I mean, people are still just warning about ownership, but I think essentially Namebase has done a great job. I mean, most of us always at least start on Namebase, and the point is they're building HDNS.io, which just was announced right now, which is a resolver so that you can use this on your phone, your whole network, your computer, and they're building Namer News and logging with Handshake. So we're excited to use that in other products too. So they're building tools and marketplaces and really facilitating and become the backbone of Handshake. And I really appreciate everything Namebase and Tieshun, Johnny Wu, of course, and others have done for this community. There's quite a bit of chats. I think we're gonna have you in some more sessions in the future. You'll be around for the conference too, right, Tieshun?
Yeah, totally. I'll be around. I'll be active here and also in the Namer News thread.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I think we'll wrap it at this. Thanks again for sharing with us. And yeah, there's so much more opportunity. This is still just the beginning, right? Maybe we'll just wrap it. It's 1 year, a bit over 1 year in since the Genesis block. But I think people listening are just getting in today. There's still huge opportunity, right? I mean, That's the main point.
Yeah, 100%. We're super early in terms of the number of names registered. We're still at 1% of what can be registered. So really early.
Okay, great. So everybody, we're going to transition to the next session, which is going to be a panel. I think Tieshun is actually on it with the DWeb Foundation and more things we can do in the community. So we might break for a few minutes and then we'll come back. Okay, everybody, thank you, and thank you, Tieshun.
Awesome, thanks.